And 3 and a 2 and a 1. We are just going to take this branding thing off. Here we go. Hey, welcome everybody to another Azure FunBytes. My name is Jay Gordon. I got a cool dude with me this week. I am super excited. It's none other than Abel Wang. What's up, Abel?
Hey, how's it going, man?
It's going really well, and you know, I'm super excited to have you with me here today because I think one of the things we talked about when I asked you to be here is that you were not a real big networking person. You are like the DevOps dude, period. That's what I know you as. And so I've had some experience in like cloud architecture. I've built a bunch of networks before, and I like the tools that we have in Azure. So I really wanted to work with you today and like take you on a little trip around some stuff, and we could talk about how this actually can be automated moving forward. We can talk a little bit how you can build ARM templates, I think. But overall, we're going to solve 3 problems, and then I want to talk to you once we just describe the 3 problems. I want to find out a little bit more about you and have everyone hear it as well. So this week, our 3 problems are pretty simple. First problem, what we're going to do is we're going to create a virtual network for an application because we actually need a network for everything to go across, right? Sure. Okay, then we need to know how to create separate subnets because I don't know about you, but when I was building a large infrastructure, it always made sense to me to have certain types of networks on, or I should say public on the public network and private on the private network. So let's talk about database communication, stuff like that, front end, back end. So we're going to create that front end, back end network. And then at the same time, we're going to create some VMs, and those VMs are going to have IP addresses that are going to be networked together via a virtual network. We're going to add additional NIC cards. So we're actually going to do what I'm sure you did at some point. I know I did. At one point, I had to open up a server. I had to pop in a new network card, and then I had to go and configure an IP address. We're going to show how Azure does that really easy. Wow. Sorry about that. I thought I had this on. My bad. I had my notifications off. Let's put this do not disturb. Sorry, everybody. That's embarrassing, but it happens. And it haven't actually got any of the notification on the screen. So that was the good part of getting that taken care of first.
Right.
All right. Anyway, sorry, everybody. Let's get started first, though. I want to talk to you, Abel.
Sure.
So I got to meet you, I guess, about almost 2 years ago. And I'm really super impressed by the things you've done. If I'm right, you've been at Microsoft now for about 7 years almost?
Yeah, something like that. Feels like forever. But yeah, I've been here about 7 years. Before I came here, I had my own software company. I've worked in consulting companies as well. And so I've been writing code for, good Lord, probably over 20 years now.
Jeez. And so throughout that time, I'm guessing you've spent a lot of time building different types of applications, seeing them deployed on different types of systems. I'm guessing you've seen it a lot.
I've seen a lot of stuff, that's for sure. Yep.
So tell me, how much have you played around with just basic networking in general, subnets, things of that nature?
So there's a running joke at Microsoft that if you want your network set up, don't ask me, because I am awful at it, right? So I know the very, very basics. I mean, I know that, okay, a VNet in Azure, that's pretty much like a network, an internal network that you would create in your data center, right? So I'm like, okay, I kind of get that. I kind of get IP addresses. My machines, they need IP addresses. I kind of get the concept of subnet. So you have one network and you can subdivide it into smaller chunks so that they're easier to manage. You can turn things on and off. All right, so I kind of get that. But beyond that, yeah, I don't really know, right? Because I've spent most of my life like writing applications. So all the network, all the hardware stuff, I'm like, oh, that's someone else's problem. But you bring up a really good point, because now in this new DevOpsy world we live in, you kind of have to know a little bit about everything, right? So I'm really excited for you to teach me more about VNet.
Sure. So you kind of mentioned it already, virtual network. That's kind of our focus today. Those are our 3 problems we're going to use virtual networks going to solve today. And so one of the things that I'm always really interested in, Abel, and you can kind of help me as I build the things, because we're going to build some stuff, and I'd love to you just talk me about some of the stuff that you know about it, and as we do it. And then if you want to ask me some questions, I'd love to hear it, because I want to kind of pick your brain about different Azure things, especially when it comes to implementing DevOps processes around a lot of the stuff we're going to look at.
Sure.
Cool. So to get started, everybody, I want you to, let's see who's in the comments. Okay, so how you doing, Phil? Love seeing you there. And of course, Greg, another one of the Mr. Azure people. Thank you very much for being part of the stream. If you have any questions for either myself or for Abel, or you just want to say hi, please chirp in. Please share the stream with your friends on Twitter or any other place. It really helps. Make sure that we keep doing this and having a good time. So we're talking today about virtual networks, and the first thing I want to do for you all is I am going to share this link for you to learn about what exactly a virtual network is. And I think, Abel, you put it kind of really easy. I used to go to data centers, and my boss would tell me, we need to fix backups. And I would say, well, what do you mean? And he'd say, everything for backups is running on the public network. And that's not good. And so we started having this kind of consternation internally about, like, well, what do we do? We have all these like deployed physical servers, and that's great. But the deployed physical servers, they need to get a second networking installed, a second networking card. And they needed their own kind of private network that just did all the stuff. But we didn't want to just do it one-to-one, you know what I mean? We just didn't want to plug into like a dummy switch, because we wanted to have a little bit more, we wanted QoS, quality of service. We wanted to make sure that if a switch port was dying, we actually had some telemetry to know what was going on. And so that was super time consuming. There's so many parts of building physical networks. And on top of that, you're going to come to me and you're going to say, Jay, I have this application I have to have deployed. You can't take these servers down. But unfortunately, that was kind of just the way it worked. And so what we get here with virtual networks is we can kind of build out these large network infrastructure beforehand. We can do it right out of the box. We don't need to have to build networks after that. We can just go ahead and build those. So I'm going to build you a network today, Abel. Okay. We're going to build 2 different types of servers to run across this network. And just the reason why is I want to show you the 2 different NICs, Windows and Linux. I want to show you how they're just both going to work. They're both going to be able to communicate. So these are all the big things that VNets kind of have that come along with them. You can bring your own hybrid infrastructure. You can create IPsec VPN tunnels. So let's say, Abel, you're not working at Microsoft. You work at some other company. And you have to do a certain deployment process where you need to be able to contact servers in the cloud, but you're on a specific network, and it has to be a private connection.
Right.
So you can extend those networks with Azure using these VNets. So you can create like VPNs, and you could just create a virtual VPN on the Azure side. If you have a real VPN concentrator on the other side, just connect the two together, and it works. It's a tremendous thing that helps people who are more focused on the other side, on the application building, rather than have to concern themselves with the network infrastructure. You're set to go. So let's move a little forward. If I'm going to share this doc with everybody in the chat, I think it's really useful to look at these docs. What is an Azure Virtual Network? And I think the answer, you know what, Abel, I think you could even answer that. What is an Azure Virtual Network?
It's a network that's inside of Azure that you can actually use, right? So like,
yeah.
You create a network for your data center. Now you need a network for all the resources you create out in Azure.
Sure. And the VNet concepts are just the same as if we were in a data center. So we're working with an address space. So an RFC 1918 compatible address. 10.0.0.4, like they say, would be the /32. And this is a subnet for an entire IP/16 range. That gives us tons and tons of IPs. Cool. Subnets, so we could take those giant networks and we could chop them up into bits. And we could take those bits and do different things on them. And then regions. So you know what a region is. We can have our VNets all scoped to specific regions. So if we have a particular application we want just in Europe because of GDPR, something like that, we can create a VNet there. And then we can kind of do things with peering. So we could create something on say the East Coast of the US and then peer the networks. And that's what you see right here. Can be connected with peering. And of course, VNets are scoped to your subscription. That's a big deal. That means that any traffic that happens to your subscription, that's where the drawdown of funds are.
So let me rewind you for a second, because I already have a question, just to show you how little I know. When you say you can peer two VNets together, does that mean you just connect them together so they act like it's one VNet?
So what they're going to do is that you're going to create routing table rules that says 10.1.0.0.1 is allowed to talk to servers on 192.168.0.1 network. So you could take those two networks and essentially say these two networks on two different subnet, or I should say two different regions. If you route it correctly and you connect the two using some sort of peering, or even the old way was to use just two VPNs, and you connect the two VPNs in the private network and say two virtual machines. So you don't have to do that anymore. What Azure lets you do is say, this is this VNet. Okay, you're on this side of the world. Your IP range is 10.0.1.1 or 10.0.0.1, whatever. Yeah. And then on the other side, you can say, we're going to connect that network so that you can access all the servers, the security groups, everything. So it's not the same network. It's just two networks that know how to talk to each other.
Got it. All right, cool.
So I'm going to start with the way we always start this stuff. Now, I think there's a little thing going on. So we're going to pick, I think, not East US because I saw something. Let's pick West US 2. We're going to just create a resource group, and we'll just call it Fun with Abel. Right? Cool. And I say this every time. Why do we create resource groups? Place for our resources.
Together, so it's easier to manage, right? Because otherwise I have a page full of 900 resources that I've created.
So we've got our resource group. It's ready to go. So I'm going to add a virtual network first. So sorry, I went a little fast. I went right here to add. And what I'm going to do is just type virtual network.
Okay.
Oop. And what we have here is a virtual network. So a lot of times when I do demos live, I like to show people the creation of the virtual network first.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because it really gives people an understanding about how everything's layered once you start building in the cloud. So I think a fundamental part of understanding Azure is understanding how each piece works together. And so I know you know how to eventually take all those layers and make them so we don't have to do this manually. So I'd like you to help me on the other side. So I created a resource group, and that's totally something that you could have had me avoid doing manually, right?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that, right? With ARM templates or with Terraform or things like that. We can dive into that a little later.
Cool. So Fun with AbleNet. That's going to be the name of our network. And here's the thing. All these, like I said, they're scoped to regions. So we're going to do our region in West US 2. So next, it's going to ask us for IP range. So this is the IPv4 default range that we're going to have out of the box. This is a ton of addresses, if you can see, like almost 66,000. So what we're going to do is eventually take that, and that's automatically subnetted by Azure with a default range. It's just by default, we need at least one IP range in order to create our network. So now the typical thing I could do here is just stop and say, I just need one network. But one of the things I think we mentioned before is that I wanted to do two networks. I want our default. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to change this to public.
Okay.
And so I want to just delineate between the two. And I'm going to select that all the services can be scoped to this particular network. So just we have some virtual traffic already like configured. There's some IP ranges. I should say there's some firewall rules we won't need to create because we can literally just use built-in Azure service endpoints. So I just selecting all to make it. But if I just wanted to have this private network for, say, SQL service or Cosmos, because I just wanted traffic to go privately to my VM to one of these databases, I can do that, and I don't have to set up firewall rules. Well, that's one of the great trusts that comes within Azure. So I told you I was going to create a private network, right?
Yep.
So what I got to do here is add a subnet, and we're going to call it private.
Okay.
And so like we did here with public, automatically, we need to add another range. And so that range I'm going to put in here is just going to be an iteration of the subnet that we already have. So 10, 3, I believe I can just do 1, 0, and then we're going to give it a /24 like we got from our public. And now we have 251 IP addresses. Okay. So that's all we did was we're doing simple math. All this is just taking, I believe, they're 256 or 32-bit addresses. And each address is just smaller and smaller, the larger the slash number is. So a /24 will give us these 256 addresses, and the 5 we can't use. Those are for networking things. But then we also can add another network after that if we need to. So we're going to go ahead and just add this. And now we've got our two networks configured. Now, there's one other one I want to create. Do you use Bastion host a lot?
No, I don't.
Okay, so Bastion host is a big part of making Azure easy for people who don't necessarily want to set up IP rules and SSH in directly or RDP. So what we can do right now is we can add another subnet called Azure Bastion subnet. Okay. And what we can do is now just do 10, 3, 2, 0. And this is, if we do this now, it's going to make some work that we have to do later a lot easier when we want to actually connect to our servers via Bastion host. So I'm just going to create this out of the box. So I have a fully prepared network. I can put anything into this network now. We have 2 tiers plus a Bastion host tier. So now I can actually just go right here to Bastion host. And it's literally just a platform as a service in between your resources. So literally you'll see just RDP or SSH, you just provide the credentials. Really cool. So we're going to do enabled. We're going to give it a name. We're just going to call it Bastion. And then what we can do is give it a subnet address. We're going to do this later, but I'm just showing you this is a thing we can do. It's just going to take too long if we do it like this. Okay. We've got firewall protection for big virtual network resources, top level stuff, not just like security groups, more things that we would also consider with like this DDoS protection. So you're getting slammed by some sort of DDoS. It's built into Azure to go ahead and mitigate it for you. Nice. Makes it so much easier. So now we'll just go ahead, review and create. And now here's the part, Abel, where you're able to kind of help me out here. So obviously everything what we build with Azure always has a template. And so can you tell me how I could kind of generalize this template?
Yeah, so what you're looking right now is the ARM template that gets generated for this specific, is it scoped to the resource group? Or no, this is just for this network, right?
Yeah, let me go ahead. I've focused right now on this, and let me make this a little bigger for everybody. So I see we've got here parameters. And so these are just every single bit of what we're creating. Am I right?
Yep.
And so we have these scripts and I could just, what I've done before, I take this, I download it. I'll open it up here in VS Code. Let's take these. So it looks like it's just JSON.
Yep.
And so I'm just taking that JSON, and these I don't have to manipulate if I'm right. Oh, no. So I have these prefixes and everything. Can I manually modify these, or can I generalize it somehow?
You can manually modify them if you want to. Usually what I do is I take the generated ARM template as a starting point. And so for those that don't know, an ARM template, basically any resource in Azure can be defined in an ARM template. An ARM template is JSON, and it describes all the resources that were deployed out in Azure. And what's really cool about it is you can take this file and you can use either PowerShell or the Azure CLI, or using whatever DevOps tooling that you want. You can say, hey, based off of this ARM template, provision and configure for me the infrastructure that I need out in Azure, and you just hand them this ARM template, right? So that's super cool and super, super powerful. ARM is, how can I say this? It's complex, right? It's not the easiest thing to work with. So yes, it is JSON, but it is a lot more than just JSON. It's the way people have explained it to me is you really should call it the ARM templating language, because it's practically a language built into it, right? So yeah. Yes, you could go in here and we could like physically change each and every variable or parameter that we need to. Or you can generalize things by using the parameters or adding the variables and things like that.
And it looks like I put in the ARM manager tools here in VS Code. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to show everybody. They're awesome. These are tools that are all built into VS Code that you can go ahead, install the extension right here. It's an official Azure supported plugin or extension, whatever the term we use is. I really, really recommend it if you're going to be messing around with templates. But for right now, our template deployed. So when you build something, just to kind of wrap this up in a box, every time you build something in the portal, what you're really doing is you're accessing a pre-created ARM template that Azure has made for everyone to use every single time they want to build something. So it's not customized. It's a super generalized template. And from what I understand, Abel, we're just filling out that template in the portal. And then eventually when we go and it takes this right here, and if we go even to redeploy, it actually creates the custom template version. And so we can modify and actually duplicate another network. And so these are the things I really have started to learn more about how to automate the processes. And so it's been really, really cool to kind of get that. And if I'm right, there's like a whole testing suite around ARM in Azure DevOps, isn't there?
Yes. So ARM templates, the power of ARM templates really starts to come into play when you start using DevOps with it, right? Because all of a sudden now you get to store what your infrastructure is going to be. You can store it in source control right alongside your source code, right? So as an app developer, I'm used to having my source code just stuck in source control.
And this is so great just to be able to have both, you know what I mean? Like your infrastructure, and that's been the whole revolution almost in what, like the last 10, 12 years in modern computing. It's like, how do you automate as much of the physical stuff as possible so that you can really pay attention to developing your application?
Yeah, because your application is way more than just source code, which is how I always looked at it. It's really source code and also the infrastructure that it runs on, because that matters, right? So now if I have my source code and my infrastructure as code, like these ARM templates, both in the same place in my source control system, everything gets versioned together, right? So that becomes super, super powerful.
So different iterations of the network, if we add new subnets, it's all stored there. Hey, Greg has got a quick start here to show everybody. The quick start for templates around RMTTK. Everybody take a look. I think it's worth, thank you very much for that, Greg. Always love how everybody shares a little bit of information in docs. So we've got our subnets, Abel. We've got our Bastion subnet, our private and our public. And so we're ready to start building some servers. So we're going to do the easy, okay? I'm just going to go ahead. We're going to go to our Fun with Abel. This is going to become more interesting, I promise. But I want to just build some stuff real quick. So Ubuntu, we're going to build one. The easiest thing in the world, we'll just build it in West US 2, where everything else is. And we're just going to call this Linux. Really simple. We're going to just start it up with everything really easily. I'm going to use an SSH key. I'm just going to call it J because I'm easy and simple with me. I'm going to use an existing public key. Give me one sec. Cat. So this is what I love doing because I'm a Mac. I just got this new Mac. Is you just cat and you put things into PB copy. PB copy is like the greatest thing. You just, there we go. Nice. Love piping it to PB copy. And now we're going to actually not open up any SSH ports. I don't want to have, or any ports for that matter. So I'm just going to say none. I don't want anything open. That's the whole point of us building this virtual network. Disks, let's just leave it alone. Now, here's where we're going to start solving the next problem in just a second. So we've got a subnet here, and we want to make sure it's on the public one. That's the one that's going to actually be routed to the internet. So we want to make sure when we create this, we create it with a public. We'll leave all this kind of alone. We'll leave all these settings default. We just need a VM. Management, default, advanced. I could put in something to custom data, but I really don't need to. There's no reason. So review and create, and let's let that build for a few minutes. And then while that does this, we're going to go ahead and build a Windows one as well.
All right. So let me reiterate, while you're doing that, let me reiterate just to make sure I understand what you just did. You created a Linux VM, you put it onto your public subnet, and you close down all of your ports. So I can't get into it.
Exactly. I want that. I 100% want that. I haven't installed any applications on it. There's nothing to do with this machine right now. So I have no interest in anyone having access to it whatsoever, except me. I will get to it. I'll show you how I'm going to get to it, though.
Perfect.
So what we're going to do here is we've got our ARM template, essentially, for this. Create. Good. Now we're going to do the same thing with Windows. So we're going to just build a Windows 2019 on this side. We're going to do it the same way we've been doing it all, AFB Live. We're just going to call it Win. But, oh, I'm putting it the wrong one. Fun with Abel. There we go. Win. Sorry. Then what we're going to do, just no infrastructure. It's a demo. Don't need it. Username, J. I've got a funny password already stored. Don't none of you steal my password, because you're not going to be able to get into the server anyway. You hear me, everybody? I don't care if you see it. And the big reason why is I closed the network to everybody. And so that's the whole big thing I wanted to show everybody, is that one of the cool parts is that you can kind of start learning a little bit more about network security too, Abel, which I think is really powerful for people who are still kind of new in the cloud. And we're mostly just developers. So the more you kind of learn about how to implement security in little ways, as you start building things, it just makes life so much better. So same thing on this side, create, let's let that build. And so while all this is going on, Abel, I'm going to tell you about the next portion. Okay. We're going to go to this resource right here. We've already got it. It's built. What I need to do is I need to add another network interface to this. We have secondary networks, but we don't actually have a network interface connected. So if we go here to networking, you can see here All we have is just one IP config, one network. That's it. What we need to do is add this other. But the thing that the reason why I've got this at a minimal, there's nothing on it yet, I didn't build it, is that I got to stop it. So I'm just going to stop it. Okay. And the reason why is that I'm going to have to do the whole idea of plugging in a network card. So we're going to plug in a network card. And we're going to do this on the Windows machine too. We can automate these things and make it a lot easier using the processes you have. And so that's one of the reasons why I want to talk to people today a little bit more about ARM templates. Because as we build these things, I want everyone to know that what we could have done is we could have added another network card automatically into the ARM template. And then when the server would have booted up, we would have had an ARM template configured with the secondary network card, and the IP actually configured. So now we go over to our Windows machine. I'm just going to stop it as well. Okay, so let's go over to this Linux machine and let's see what it says here. Attached network interface. So that was not allowed to be on when the server was booted up. So there's no extra interface available right now. So what we're going to do is go to create and attach one. And so it's scoped right to the resource group, just like we would any other thing. And what we're going to just call this is LinNIC2. Okay, we're going to scope it to the private subnet. And so that's the difference. Remember, when we built the machine, we built it on the public subnet. So now what we're going to do is just leave these things alone. We don't need to do anything. It's just not necessary. Just create all those defaults. So now we've created this other network card. And what you'll see once it becomes ready. And so let's do the same thing on the Windows machine. Let's attach another network device. And we'll just call this WinNIC2. Same thing, private, create.
So I'm going to go old school on you for a second. Basically,
do it.
It seems like what you're doing is you cracked open the computer, your server, you jammed in a new network card, both for the Linux and for the Windows, and you grabbed a cable that was for your private network and stuck it into your new network cards.
Yeah, but the cool thing is that let's say that network is already DHCP enabled. So now this one, see, now that exactly what you just said, attach the network device. So it's like there's a new card just plugged in. Okay. So now let's start it.
Okay, makes sense.
So we've solved a couple of the problems that we talked about today. So the first problem, we said we needed a network to run some servers on. We've got a network. Then I said we needed multiple subnets. I wanted to make sure that we have two subnets, one for our public traffic that's going to be NATed to the public IP, and then we wanted another that's going to be just for internal private traffic. That's it. So we've basically got here WinNIC2. It's attached. So let's go ahead and start this as well. So we got to these machines, right? But I have no way to get them actually installed or have anything on it, huh? You know, we talked about a few minutes ago, and we're going to take a break and just talk for a second, Abel. So I'm going to kind of just remove the screen for a second. And so what we've done is we've spent a lot of time doing the manual work that comes with creating these machines. And the second part of that, obviously, is preparing it for deployment, adding your application. So now we've got these two blank servers, Abel. Let's talk about if let's just say I wanted to build things this way and I wanted to start implementing these two machines into like a CI/CD process. What's kind of like my first step? Like I know we've got, if I go to actually the virtual machine, I've got continuous delivery here on the side. It's a little scary to me, this one. But if you want to, can you give me a little, just like, let me bring it back up so people know what I'm talking about. But like this whole section here about continuous delivery in Azure is kind of scary to me. And I've tried to get it to work with VMs. And I was curious if you could tell me a little bit about what goes on in the back.
Absolutely. So this is hooked up to the DevOps services that are built directly into Azure. And and the name of it is dun, 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 Azure DevOps Services, right? So if you go ahead and click configure, basically what that's going to do is it's going to build you a pipeline that's going to take your ARM template and actually deploy it into Azure. So it will help you provision whatever infrastructure that you have described out into Azure for you in an automated fashion. So it's pretty powerful, and it's a quick way to really jumpstart you, right? So you don't have to build out your pipeline completely from scratch, which is kind of a pain.
So now I've got my hardware. I can actually just say, these are the two, whether I'm using this or actually configuring it directly within Azure DevOps. I'm essentially saying, these are my two bad boys. I need you to do some interesting things to these. And I can just point it right at these two nodes, right?
Yep.
Cool. It sounds like Azure DevOps makes it kind of easier to do this kind of plug and play DevOps, which I know a lot of people are looking for.
Yep.
So
it's a great place to start, right? When you first try to create a CI/CD pipeline, like you said, it can be pretty daunting. Like, where do you even begin? How do you, it's much easier to have a pipeline that's in place that does a lot of what you need to do for it. And then you can go back in there, customize it, make it do more stuff. Or like I said earlier, you can customize it to do exactly what you want it to do.
Gotcha. So we got to the point where I told you I want to connect to this, right?
Okay. Yep.
So what are the normal ways we set up some sort of IP rules or whatever? But here's the thing. So we both have Azure Security Center on our respective company accounts. And if you were in some sort of large organization where they have network policies that state you can't just have things open to the world, you may at home might not have VPN access, but you do need to get into these machines. And so the old way would be like the hole punch. Do you know what I mean? Like by the hole punch?
Mm-mm.
So
you have to punch a hole in your firewall and say, yeah, let open this particular port.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. For this IP, let it access this port. And it was not a great way of handling security of these networks because of a thing that I know you know a little bit about is configuration drift. I'm sure you've heard of configuration drift. It's one of those things where you would do this, it didn't work. And so eventually you get to the point where you have all these IPs that are open on systems, and then someone forgets to take them out. And then eventually somebody gets their machine with a keylogger, it cracks, and then we run into a bigger problem like what Twitter was running into yesterday. But who knows what that was about. So there's this service that we have in Azure. And so when I did some system administration work, we used to use a thing and we called it a jump box. Have you ever heard of this term?
Mm-mm.
So a jump box was essentially a server that sat between the two, like between the network, essentially. It was kind of like somewhere in between that you would connect to this machine, and this machine would be configured with like a two-factor authentication and everything, and then would give you network connections to all the other resources.
Got it.
Now, the problem with this jump box is that it still was a manually managed server. So you also had to manage the security of this machine that's essentially connected to everything.
Right.
Without using the F word, that's pretty effing terrifying. And I actually was in a situation where that machine got compromised. Brett, absolutely, you are so right. You put things on a jump box to run as like a bash script across like, say, 40 machines, and then you forget it, and then someone one day decides to run it again. And so these are the things why you want to avoid it. But what we can do is we can create a Bastion host. So Azure lets you go into here and click Bastion. You can use Bastion. So it really kind of creates what is an SSH and RDP in between machine. It literally will do both right here from the browser. So we've already created a subnet like we did before. You have to create its own subnet. If you take a look here, this has to be at least a /27. That's why I created this first and foremost, was this Astra Bastion subnet. This is a private network that Azure is going to connect this Bastion server to that eventually is going to connect to all your other hosts. So what I'm going to do, we'll go back. We'll go ahead and we'll just say, yep, let's create that. It's going to need a public IP address. Don't worry about creating one on your own. Let it create one for you because it has a specific SKU and setup that you need. When you're doing this automatically, I'm sure that via ARM, it makes a little bit more sense how to configure that with just like this IP scope to this particular service, which is Bastion. You can also just look for Bastion here if you wanted to as a service that you can create. So you don't just have to do it within like the SSH section or the RDP section. You can go into and create a Bastion host for all your service. Okay. So let's enable this one. So I've already just really have to leave all the things as is. I didn't have to. I already created the network and the subnet for it. So all I have to do is click create. And so it's going to. It's just not done, of course. Oh, Azure. That's just ARM being ARM. So what's going on right now is a Bastion host is being created for us. It's literally just another machine in between our networks. And eventually, once it's up, and it's going to take a few minutes, let me go back to use Bastion. I wonder why. Let's try it again. Let's just leave it alone this time. So what's going to happen in the background is it's going to create this Bastion host. And then once the Bastion host is ready, so you'll see right here, Fun with Abel Bastion. So this is going to take maybe about 3 or 4 minutes. And while that's going, let's you and I just kind of, as we say in Yiddish, kibitz, chat, whatever. Oh, failed to deploy a new Bastion. What happened here? Let me bring back up that screen. It's always fun to see Azure problems in the real. So weird. It said it wasn't created. Where's the log? See notifications here. Oh, okay. So there's 2 going at the same time. It's because the other one.
Yep.
So let's kind of wait out this service, and we can kibitz, as I was saying.
All right, so I'm going to rewind a little bit again just to make sure I'm understanding what's going on. You got 2 machines, right? Both of them have 2 NIC cards. They're both plugged into the public and the private network. Mm-hmm. None of the ports are open. We need to be connected to it somehow in a secure way, so we're going to use this thing called Bastion.
It's right in the middle.
Subnet. So you've created your own subnet directly for it. And this particular subnet also needs to be able to reach out. Well, it needs to have a public IP address so that we can reach into this specific subnet. The Bastion.
Exactly. It's like a public-facing server. It's the best way to think it. Like we talked about before, a jump box. Bastion. Yeah. Well, you know what? That's a really great suggestion, Brett. And I want you all to remember that user voice is kind of like the best way to communicate these types of requests. Phil's for it also. So I'm going to recommend, if you want these types of services, it is really, really well. Thank you for the link also to what Azure Bastion is. Appreciate it, everybody. But more than anything, these are all services that if you want access to, if you want improve your Azure experience, you need to tell us, and we want to help you use these services. It goes without saying that we just need your help to make sure it works, you know? So everybody, if you're watching, please, 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 every single time you think about an improvement that we can make to Azure, I know user voice is great. Your chat isn't updating. Sorry, Gregor. There's a couple different places you can watch it. YouTube, Twitch, should be able to see it on all those places. So I think, Abel, because of that storage issue that we're running into, creating a Bastion is a little bit funky at the moment. So I'm going to try it once more. Okay. So thank you for being patient for me. But, you know, sometimes when you build it and you build it live, I think you know it just as well as I do that these things happen. But I will tell you something, actually. I built another one. So I built another one to have ready for us in case something like this went awry. So I am going to go ahead and bring up the Bastion for this. And then I'm going to bring us up. So this is almost the same situation. I built just a second version in case things went a little weird today, just because I said there was a little bit of a problem that I noticed with a storage region. So it's always great to have redundancy. So Bastion, I'm going to get my Windows server right here, and then I'm going to go ahead and go to my Linux server right here. And they both have the same situation, 2 networks. We'll go here to networking. There's NIC2, just like Lynn. We've already got all the things that I did before. I just want to show you now at this point how we're going to actually connect and start installing stuff. So we'll go back to overview. We'll click connect. We'll go to Bastion. Now it's going to connect to Bastion, and it's going to ask me what my auth type is. My auth type here is just my private key from my computer. So all I have to do is just go right here. Actually, I need to do it a little differently because it's in it's in like a hidden directory in a Mac. So I kind of have to do it like this. I have to use open .ssh directory. It's a weird Mac thing that you have to do. And I can just go here to my private key right here. And so what I'm going to do is just go ahead and drag in my private key.
Okay.
And now what it's going to do is the Bastion is going to have my private SSH key that's going to match with the public that I actually created the host with. So I click connect right here. There we go. And so now I have my Linux machine that's online and ready for me to kind of do whatever it is. And so the point I want to make, though, is I'm going to do the same thing with the Windows machine. So I have the password here. And we'll just do Azure user and the password. And so we'll do the same thing here, which we'll connect. Look at this. And so here's the part I want to show everybody that it's really what makes this all kind of wrap up, if you don't mind. So let's make this a little bigger for everyone to see. Oh, I can't because it's a browser. My bad. Let me bring this up so it's a little bit more. There you go. So see if I can increase the size of PowerShell also. Nope. All right. What I really want to show you, Abel, is if IP config /all on the Windows side.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the Linux side, I want to show you kind of if config. And so what we have here is ETH1. That's the private network, the secondary network, because you can see ETH0 is 10.2.0.4 public.
Okay.
Now we have ETH1, 10.2.1.4 private. Here on the Windows machine, we have the same situation, 10.2.0.5 for public, and then 10.2.1.5 for private. So now here's the thing I want to show you I did. So if I curl localhost over on this, localhost, dummy. I thought I had Nginx installed, but let's see. Sudo apt-get install Nginx. Okay, yeah, sure. So here's how I wanted to kind of wrap this up for you to kind of show you why I would set this up. What's the whole point? So we know what our remote IP address is. And if I ping the other server, you can see the network is responding. That is the least incredible part of this. The fact that you can ping the network is not the thing that I really want to show you. What I really want to show you, Abel, is this part. Is so I can go to ping right here. I'm going to curl port 80 on that as soon as the Nginx install finishes. And it should, unless I need to do some binding configs on in the Nginx side, it should just work. But we're still waiting for stuff to install. But what I'm getting at is the reason why I would want it to run across that private network would be the same reason why I would set up, say, a microservice on a separate secondary port, and it's a private microservice. So now we can even use these virtual networks to do things like put HTTP-based APIs into network, like microservices, and then have them only able to be accessed via private networks. So let's see if this works. Yep, there it is. You see right here, I was able actually to curl that IP. And so let me see. I can go to Internet Explorer. And I should be able, it's got the hard admin. I don't know about you, Abel, but hard admin always is like one of those things where like, oh, this is going to take an hour to fix. I can never get it right on the first try. So let's see. What is my network here again? So Ifconfig. So 10.2.1.4. So let's go to 10.2.1.4. Look at that! On a private network across the two machines. And this is kind of like the reason I wanted to kind of show all this is that we've interconnected two different operating systems, two different networks, or I should say two different subnets. And then we've also kind of showed how that traffic can be isolated so that, one, it's just from those two services that we want to be able to accessing each other. And so the other thing that we would do here, honestly, that I think would really make sense with this Windows and Linux set is, let's say on the Windows side, I have an IIS configuration, .NET Core, whatever. I don't know why I'm doing it in Windows. I could do it in Linux, but whatever. And let's say that I want for my backend databases MySQL. I can just run it here and just connect it to the private network, and that's it. And so I think that's kind of what I wanted to show you today and kind of demystify a little bit of the networking stuff. I hope it got you a little bit more in understanding why we kind of create the VNETs. I'm going to, before we finish up, Abel, I'm just going to go into this VNet section and just show some of the other things we can do in case we wanted to. So if we wanted to add additional IP spaces, because we're going to peer to networks, you have to have those two ranges, so you can actually add additional IP address spaces here. You can also add additional subnets within this network. So I can say, let's go ahead and say the /16, I'm going to add 10.3. Or I should say, no, I'm going to have to do something a little further off. So I think I have to do like 10.10. Yep. So I can do this 10.10 network on the same, and then I can actually start subnetting that as well. So go here. We can start working with that 10.10.1.2/32 or whatever it is. So now we can actually create more networks and more networks. The point is that we're able to keep extending all of our networks. The DDoS protection stuff, it's just one or the other. It's all based on SKU and cost. Security, the security center we were talking about, like you can see if you're out of policy, which I think is really helpful for people who are just starting to get to understand network security. DNS servers. Abel, you've worked with a lot of, I guess, Active Directories, right?
I have.
And so there's a reason why you would want to specify like custom DNS in this type of situation if you're using an Active Directory. Let's just think about it outside of Azure Active Directory. Just think, if this is a hybrid network and we're joining a domain outside, am I right to say that this is a situation where changing the DNS servers is probably going to be a part of that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Great. And so peerings, remember I said we can peer those VNETs from different ranges. So we can go in here, specify the different networks, share the different IP networks that we're going to bind, and then it'll connect the two. And then there's just some other small things, obviously cost analysis. A lot of that has to do with network traffic and flow, because as many networks as we create, I mean, and all this stuff, it all still costs money. That's the big thing that we always have to be considered with. So anyway, Abel, I think we've kind of covered this stuff today. How do you feel?
Dude, I freaking love this. I've actually learned a lot from this. And this totally affects what we do, right? Because you know as well as I do that one of our security policies is we cannot open SSH on our VMs. We cannot open RDP, which makes connecting to them really, really difficult, right? Except you just showed me, not really. I can set up a Bastion subnet and turn on Bastion, and it just kind of works, right? There's not a whole lot more to it.
Yeah, I really love that it's been simplified. I remember I used to work with a lot of other types of self-made jump boxes and Bastion hosts and all this, or then like I said, like the hole punch. And the hole punch to me was just such a difficult thing to accept as someone who really wanted to do good system administration. Because and then eventually I even found like some software as a service that would do it where it was like hole punch as a service. Now that was really smart because we didn't need to do VPNs and things like that, but it still wasn't very well managed. It was a third-party service and it wasn't connected to all this. So anyway, thank you, Phil. I really appreciate that. I'm going to put on my fancy "We're Leaving" music.
Nice.
So I'm going to make that smaller or whatever. So I guess it was, I don't know, a couple months ago, I really wanted to start like open sourcing music is the best way to describe it. Can you hear it? Is it playing? Let me see. It's kind of low. There you go. Yeah, so I started open sourcing music, and I didn't want to worry about any of the sound, like give me like copyright stuff and nonsense like that. So I started making these little songs, and I did them under like Creative Commons license. And so I like to kind of finish up the show with a little something in the background while I say goodbye to everybody. If anybody wants to listen to any of these silly songs I made, that's where they are. Abel, I'm going to share your Twitter account. Always, let's show where everybody can find you. I'm going to do that. I'm also going to share your GitHub because you've got a lot of real interesting, useful stuff. And if I am right, another big thing that you are a part of is the DevOps Lab.
Yes. So we have a show on Channel 9 called the DevOps Lab, and we usually put out a show every week.
Very cool. I know I've talked to you. I got to get with you on that some point. I will. I actually did all the things you challenged me to do with it too, which is
that's awesome.
Abel's been really great, and I'm just gonna say this, Abel, you've been really great at challenging me to do a thing or two. I'll come to you with a problem or an idea, and you'll kind of say to me, that's really cool, and I've seen that, but why don't you try it with this? And it's been really great, and it's actually made doing this a lot easier, because you go through all of the little moments. And you start to realize, like, wow, the thing that Abel is doing is actually part of the big picture. And I'm just showing those little blocks here and there. And so I really like showing everybody those building blocks on how we can get to do the things that eventually we can do with Azure DevOps, Kubernetes, web app services, or just plain old virtual machines.
Awesome, man. This has been super cool. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you very much for being part of it, Abel. I will sign off for everybody, but for now, bye, Abel. Thank you very much for being on.
See ya.
Man, that was great. I'm so lucky that I get to do this with so many great people. I got Ozzy Osbourne behind me at the California Jam back in 1974. And so we're rocking and having a good time. And I just wanted to say, everybody, don't forget to click the link right down here, FunByte 06, if you want to get more information. I tend to always take this broadcast and I put it in a Dev2 blog post, and then the FunByte 06 aka link will take you to that. So you'll be able to get all the links associated with this episode, and you'll actually get the YouTube. So if you want to fast forward or go back, I understand it's a long show. I would want to fast forward too to get to the special parts. So everybody, thank you so much. From my new dog Meadow, me, Abel, and everyone I know, thank you very much for watching another Azure FunBytes. Stick around next week. I got to find a guest. I will. But next week, we're actually going to do containers. And I think that day one containers is going to be something I think you're all going to really dig. Containers are such a huge building block of Azure. I think it's a bigger building block than some people don't even realize. Everything almost, it's somewhere or another, it's on a container in Azure, it seems, except for those VMs. Those aren't containers, but if you think about it. Anyway, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for being part of this. If you have any questions before I leave, please put them in the chat. I will chill for just another minute or so. And if not, hit me on Twitter at AzureFunBytes or at JDestro. Please tell your friends that I've been doing this, and I think they'll enjoy learning a little bit more about Azure too. So we'll see you next time. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.